building block before dopamine. Well, if you have specifically supplement with that, your system's going to be able to make the most dopamine it's programmed to make. So then there's more stuff for medications to work on. And
can I highlight that for a second? Understand that dopamine as a neurotransmitter is the reward neurotransmitter. It's very important when it comes to human evolution because it's the reason we procreate. It's the reason we forage for food. It's the reason people come in from the cold or come in from the heat or the urge to go to the bathroom. And the thing that always amazes me, I look at dopamine as the molecule of more, or really the motivation molecule, because it's the reward system to the brain. So we talk a lot about motivation and passion and interest, but at the end of the day, oversimplified, it's your brain's quest for dopamine. And what you're talking about is, hey, we need this at its highest levels in order for your brain to function. So it really makes a lot of sense to optimize it through these types of things in nutrition so that you have it all that's there, so you're running all cylinders. So again, I just really want to emphasize when we're looking at dopamine, think of it as highly correlated to motivation, and the more you can get of this, the better it is for you. Make sense?
Yeah. And the other thing is that, and people hear of, yes, the reward center, and there is a specific center of the reward center. Dopamine hits that, feels good, and you want to do that. But dopamine is also the neurotransmitter that is in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's involved with the executive functions. And what medications do is help more dopamine stay in that connective space between the nerves so that then the signals get transmitted better. So that's the other side of dopamine besides the just reward part. That's what makes meds work, the amphetamines and the methylphenidate or Ritalin kinds of things.
And just to capitalize on that, having that dopamine in that gap when it comes to medication, it doesn't tell you what to pay attention to, and it doesn't teach you to get organized. What it does is it helps you sustain focus longer on something you would ordinarily have difficulty. So as I describe it, if you could read 4 pages of a book before you lost focus, and you can read 4 chapters now, it's having an impact. Going back to your comment why this is so important and such a big part of nutrition is by taking these types of supplements is you're setting your brain up for success.
Yes, and two ones that are, I think, neglected, and yet you can show that they help ADD, are magnesium and zinc. And those are what are called cofactors in biochemical reactions. So, yes, changing one thing into another at metabolic steps, you could do it if the temperature was 140. Work in our brain. It's not 100. But when you have magnesium there, that drives the reaction so it can happen at our body temperatures. And so the magnesium and zinc are important to have as cofactors in there. And like many things, too much is not good, and the wrong kind of magnesium, and then it's like taking milk and magnesia. Well, you're going to spend more time in the bathroom than you are being able to think. And one called magnesium glycinate is one that's better absorbed, doesn't hang out in your intestine and cause the problems. And that means it's there to do its stuff.
You also have some recommendations to help with anxiety, right?
Yeah, and there's one thing that's omega-3 supplements, fish oil. And one of the things that just bothers me so much, and I see it in professional literature as well as in other publications, that, omega-3s didn't work. Well, okay, how much, and what was the balance of EPA and DHA, which are the 2 brain-active ones, and those aren't talked about. Well, if you're using just any old fish oil, it may not work. But if it's higher in those 2, then those are the brain-active ones. DHA is actually part of neuron structure. So you can make neurons better, and you're laying down more neurons going in the direction you need them. And actually, when you exercise, you're being able to make more of those in the 2 hours afterwards. Another place exercise is important.
Can't wait to get to that one. But you bring up something that's really important. When you go out in the ADD world, situational variability and specificity is really, really important. And making the discernment when you're taking omega-3s as to, okay, it might not be having an impact because it doesn't have the parts that you need. And this is where it's difficult because you're not marketed this way. You're just told omega-3s are good across the board with little discernment on the differences. And so I'm kind of glad you brought that up so that our people can make that distinction.
Yeah, and what I've looked at and what I understand is having at least a total of 1,500 milligrams of the EPA plus DHA. That's how much you need. Well, a lot of things are like 600 EPA and 300 DHA. You're going to have to take a lot of those.
Yep.
And you find ones that are more, actually there's one kind that's, I think it's a 7-to-1 ratio. I can't remember the exact milligrams, but if you had 3 of the 500 milligram capsules, and thankfully they make them that size so they're swallow. If you have 3 500 milligram capsules, you're getting 1,450 milligrams of the 2 you need. So it's kind of more efficient.
Yep.
So let's get to I've taken to calling it intentional physical activity. A lot of people, hear exercise and
that's my favorite.
Yeah, jump. And it's so, and actually it's a big part of being able to get sleep better. One of the more direct correlations: exercise more, sleep better.
So this is one of my favorite topics for a couple reasons. One, being a coach and working just as a coach, period, working in the ADHD community and being an ex-athlete. I was a competitive swimmer. Was actually ranked in the world at one point in time. For the Canadians that are out there, Alex Bauman actually was at Indiana for a brief period of time. He won Olympic gold in the '84 Olympics in the 200 400 IM. I remember John with him back in the old days watching I forget stuff. Anyway, I'm getting off the topic. My point really is that exercise, if we could put it in a pill, it would be the ADHD drug of the century. Exercise can help with sleep. It can help with diet. It can help there's a level of mindfulness that kind of goes along with it. So it's really there. But the thing about it that always blows me away is people don't understand. They don't give it the respect it deserves. Anything that is repetitive and boring is a characteristic of something people with ADHD have a hard time with. And when you think about exercise, for me, swimming was one. Swimming around a black line for 10 miles a day is the definition of boring. So the question is we all know exercise is good, but why is it people don't do it? And the reason I say is it's a repetitive and boring task, and nobody's solving for the problem. If you're going to exercise, you got to bring something that's going to stimulate your brain. And I say this often is when it comes to exercise, it's social, it's social, it's social. Did I say it was social? Because
you mentioned that.
Exercise tends to be done with other people. Now I'm not going to get into standard deviations, and there are people outside on the outliers that can do this, but by and large, exercise is a social activity. It's done with other people. It's a means to kind of keep you engaged. And I say this because I used to swim 15,000 yards a day, 4 hours a day, all the way through college, a little bit afterwards. But ever since 1988, I've always had an exercise partner. I still work out and I still swim, but it's rarely by myself, rarely. And so when I'm working with people that need to exercise, let's figure out the brain stimulation, and exercise is a secondary activity. Too often we focus on exercise itself, and I just got to get up, I just got to do this or whatever, and it doesn't solve the problem. And so if you've got ADHD, you got to solve for that brain stimulation, whether you're listening to a podcast or watching TV or checking out cute girls in the gym room, or for me it was competition. There's no way I could do a plank for my body, but if somebody's next to me and I'm trying to beat them, that's the brain stimulation that I need to kind of get it done. And so, again, exercise is really important, but the question is most people aren't doing it because they're not realizing they got to solve for the stimulation. Thoughts on that?
And, well, I think the one thing, and it works for me, is this stimulation is I'm aiming for something. So I'm a cyclist. I like to do 20 miles is a nice morning, and 40 miles is a pretty good day. But I know if I'm training to do a ride in September that's going to be 30 miles and 3,600 feet of elevation gain, I've got to be able to include some hills in there. And some of it's distance, but also other things as far as endurance part. I also know I have to eat right, and not just beforehand, but I have to replace with some carbs and protein the things that have been used up in muscles. So it's a bunch of things. Stimulation, it can be, you're going for a walk in the morning on a nice day, and you're seeing sky that's not just gray. That certainly applies out here in Seattle. And yes, there are social things. A lot of people do much better when they have a partner to go for a walk, and they both encourage that person, or the person, hey, come on, we got to be ready in 10 minutes. Oh, yeah, well, okay, I guess I'll do it. And yeah, going to a gym can be social, but not. Exercise doesn't have to be, I'm setting aside an hour and a half and I have to go to the gym and certain weights or whatever. Not at all. It can be taking a 15-minute break for a walk at lunch, and you take one at home. 2 15-minute walks actually gives you about the value of a 30-minute one.
So I have a lot of respect for Dr. John Rady, who wrote the book Spark and really talks a lot about this. And everybody, utmost respect. I'm going to, as being who he is, he talks a lot about exercise, and like I said, it's great. And there's a prescription. A lot of times they'll say you need to do cardio 3 times a week for 30 minutes and stuff like that. And I totally subscribe to that. However, as a coach, people say, how much exercise should I do? And I say, the amount you will do. Like, if you'll do 20 minutes, but you're not going to do 30 minutes, realize that you won't do any at all. I'd rather you do 20 minutes and do it than 30 minutes and not all. And then the exercise you should do is not what you should do, but what you will do.
Yes, exactly.
And I've done a lot of presentations where I actually make the distinction, because we think about exercise as exercise, but, there's team sports. If you've got a learning disability, team sports can be difficult because you got to learn different types of schemes, and that might not be the right realm for you. There's individual sports. I was a swimmer. That's an individual sport, although there's a lot of socialization. Then there's non-competitive sports. There's sports that you can do because some people don't really like the competition of all. Then there's other things you can get some exercise, like chopping wood. I've actually had people before they would just split a cord of wood, maybe sell it, but their exercise was they enjoyed doing that. So when you look at exercise, you break it down into different kind of components, and sometimes certain exercises might not be for you because maybe you don't work well in teams, or maybe you don't really do well under competition. But you take a look at what works for your individual brain and mold the exercise to your brain, not try to get your brain to do the exercise you think it should.
Yeah, and some kids, even adults, they like basketball, and sure, they may like being in a group that plays 4-on-4 basketball 4 days a week, but also just going out and shooting hoops on your own. That's getting you moving. You've got a goal and a reward. Hey, I made another basket. Or I learned how to do this move. It doesn't have to be you're in the game in competition. In a way, you're competing against yourself. But something like you say, what will you do? That's where I am using more the intentional physical activity idea of, you've got an intent, you're going to go out and play basketball, shoot some hoops, you're going to run, with a group of people you're going to walk, you're going to chop wood, something you're being intentional about doing it. And getting moving makes a huge difference. And as John Rady said in his book Spark, and I had known this, I think it's pretty neat. There's a brain development neurotropic factor, and that's what helps neurons grow in your brain. So you can set down new pathways, which is what we want to do with ADD, because the old ones haven't been working. Well, there's more of that available in the couple hours after exercise. So studying for an exam in college, if you go for a walk and sit down and study, you're going to be able to put down